Welcome to Here for the Experience. I'm your host, Michael Dreiling. My guest today is a graduate from Kansas State University with a degree in electrical engineering, and he's also the director of engineering at Electrex, a company based out of Hutchinson, Kansas. He has a background in pastoral work. His story is really going to be powerful because it brings perspective on personal convictions and values. Let's get started. So I want to introduce my guest today, Tim Buhler. It's really good to have you.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm glad to be here and very excited to spend some time with you.
Let's talk about your background, kind of give everybody some context, and then maybe how we know each other.
Yeah. So, I grew up in the area here, not too far from Inman, Kansas, and went to school at Kansas State University and had a chance just to get out in the industry. I was a farm boy, grew up on the farm, and just thought, how cool would it be to put a computer in a combine? So I went into electrical engineering, and I thought, this would be back in the 90s. Well, Since then, we've actually done that, and I went to Case, New Holland, and spent some time at AGCO here in Heston, most recently, until 2016, which my dream project was to automate a combine fully, and the AGCO produced the ideal combine, and that was kind of my dream there. And so fulfilling that, and decided something new was to come back and around, do something. And all of a sudden this new opportunity opened up in Hutchinson, Kansas, called Electrex, and had no idea what that was, and some friends of the family just connected me into it.
Okay.
I decided to jump into that. First time being on the vendor side for manufacturing, and that was a very new, unique thing. Of course, we do our product inside the prison and privatize the industry and make harnesses there, and found myself all of a sudden checking myself in time to time weekly into prison, and ran across yourself and met a bunch of other guys, and just immediately became intrigued with the work. I have this unique background being both a pastor and engineer in my past 20 years, and so found a place where both of those things, reaching unreached people, has always been a passion of mine, as well as designing innovative equipment and manufacturing. Very two extreme opposite-ended things, finding themselves interwoven together, and really excited about, we've known each other since that first week of work to this day, and so that's almost 7 years ago now that we first started.
I had no idea it was going to be that kind of connection when I first met you.
Yeah.
Of course, as time went on, I could see there was some common ground that we would probably connect on a deeper level with. That was probably a surprise for you, as far as you probably didn't really maybe foresee.
I had no idea what I was walking into. I never envisioned myself ever going down this path career-wise and vocationally, and it has been the best 7 years of my life. I have absolutely loved it. It's been the best fit. Pete Oakes owns this locally with his son Austin, and so it's privately owned, and the values map that they run that by is my personal values map. So the overlay was really nice, as I get to be who I am in my life as well as at work, which is a rare thing.
It is a rare thing.
But walking into the prison, and first time ever into a prison, and just to, you see the Netflix version or the Shawshank Redemption version or whatever you think of preconceived going in, which was just nothing like what we ended up doing. And having our manufacturing facility inside, I just got to see you guys work, and through the work I got to connect with you. And so we had that work level, then I got to understand the work with the guys, and then the deeper level of actual reformational, transformational work, and being an impact there. in doing that. But I made a decision early on in that I was curious, like, who are these guys that I'm working amongst? Like, what did they do to get here? What are those things? And I immediately just put that aside. So one of the very first things I did is that first month of work is, you can look up anyone at any time on the system and go see what was it that brought them here. And I decided if they wanted to tell me, they could tell me. Otherwise, that's for them to tell me their story. But I'm just going to judge the man in front of me and not the man who was. And I think that really helped me just enter in that with just, and I was, as I shared with you in the past, it's just like really surprised by finding a men of convicted felons to find men of conviction. And that is something I'm not used to seeing and finding in society, at church, anywhere I go. Yeah. It's hard to find what drives a man and what is a man of conviction. And the density of men that have conviction in prison is higher than out in society. And
talk about that for a second. So just define what you mean by like finding someone with conviction. Like when you say, this person has conviction.
So conviction is someone or something that at the end of the day, I will not ever go against. It's the thing is your backbone, right, in your life. It's those things that are going to drive you. And if it's to be a great father or a husband or a man of faith, what is those convictions that define you and make you who you are? And you're that person no matter where you are in the space of life. You don't just flip them on and off. They're always on. There are always these things that are non-negotiables that you will never compromise.
So, Tim, with your pastoral background,
Yep.
have you ever had anyone ask you what the difference is between being spiritual or spirituality versus being religious or following a certain religion? Or
that's a huge topic over my last 20 years is this whole idea of spiritual, your own person, having your own values, your own belief, and versus a religious thing where you just follow along with no relationship, no real personal connection, but just a system that you're just following through. And there's huge denominations today that are very religious, but very low relationship, very low personal connection, very low spirituality. And then you have others that are just extreme the other way, where it's very high spirituality, but very low structure, very low religion around it. It's just everyone's up for their own personal side of it. So it is a real... I've seen that, and it's always trying to figure out, how do I manage that personally? I call it, do I have religion without relationship, or do I have relationship without religion? And is one worse than the other, or what's that dichotomy look like in that? So I think of that. So it's connection and competency, right? It's like my ability to experience something and my ability to know something. And people might know a lot about God, but not know him in any personal way. Right. And people might know him personally in some spiritual way. Like I hear stories sometimes like an angel came by my side and it just like saved me in this accident or something, and I know God exists spiritually, but I don't know anything about him. Yeah. And there's just this thing. So is it relationship minus religion or religion minus relationship, or is it both? And I think for me, it is very much both.
So it's like a balance of both, maybe?
Yeah, so I don't like the term balance. That is not a friendly term for me. Okay. Instead, I use the term tension. Okay. And so I'm never seeking balance in my life. I'm always seeking tension in my life. And that's a real thing for me. So my life is always about, I've never found this like this Buddhist kind of thing where I found this peace, transcendent peace, tranquil peace in terms of just finding that middle ground. But instead, it's just been this, I've always felt tension one way or another. And when I'm not feeling tension is actually when I'm worried.
Really?
Yeah, because then I know I've rested too far on one side or the other without feeling that pull. So I always want to feel a pull of that between the two and to do that. So where is it that I have a personal connection with God, my own personal convictions, but also knowing that I belong to a larger group? If it's true, then surely it's just not me having those same convictions. It's shared convictions of being a part of a group that is shared convictions, like a church or a local church or those things. So where do we, and we'll never always, but we major on the major, minor on the minors. Where are those major things, those major convictions versus distinctives? Those unique minor things that are just unique. And those distinctives are actually really helpful to grow. right? But it's the major things that are I'm not going to compromise on.
Right.
So actually, I'll flip the script here with you this morning.
Okay.
And I think you probably have one of the most interesting stories of what it looks like to have religion minus relationship. To live out of someone else's convictions for you. And so I would like to hear if you'd be willing to share your story of you growing up in such an environment where you had high religion, low relationship,
Yeah.
and what happened as a result of that. And if you'd be willing to share this morning with us,
Well,
your story. Yeah.
I might share some of that. I don't know
Yeah.
how deep I'll get into that,
Yeah.
but you're absolutely right. So, growing up, it was pretty much religion centered
Yeah.
and very low relationship, which is to say, I know the people there that attend church, but I don't really, may or may not really know them very well. But the personal experience or introduction with God or having a relationship with God was pretty much low level,
Yeah.
if any at all. And I think the problem with that is, or at least for me, was because I didn't have a personal experience with God myself, my own relationship, my own personal experience. I had no point of reference when things tend to veer off course for me later in life, as they did. And so I didn't really have a compass. I really didn't have a point of reference to say, wait a minute, that something's, I'm out here in deep water, because I was, again, following a religion with other people's convictions. I wasn't really following, I had no personal experience to, as a touchstone, as a touch base to,
Yeah.
maybe cause me to, like you were talking about, attention, or a life preserver in this case, nothing to really pull me back in.
Yeah.
So, where that led to was me making a horrible decision, but thinking I was doing it for the right reason because it was in a religious context or a religious background that kind of pushed me towards that.
And a religious authority told you this is
Yeah.
the right thing to do, and you need to go do this, and you just acted out of his.
I want to be careful how that comes across, because I'm not in any way saying
Yeah.
I don't bear responsibility for it, or
Exactly.
somebody made me do this or that. That's not the case, but I definitely felt a lot of emotional and mental pressure towards doing that. And because I didn't have my own conviction, I was still young. I hadn't really had a chance in life to really even start forming those convictions. And and it's one thing to know the difference between what's right and wrong, given any certain circumstance or area. But as we learn later in life, it's another thing to stand on it, to really know with conviction, okay, this is right, and I'm going to stand with this no matter what. Or this is wrong, I'm not going to do this regardless, no matter who tells me this or that. And I hadn't really had a chance to really form those concrete convictions yet. So again, that was a vulnerability for me. On top of just not having any relationship, spiritual relationship or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it took me out there, and not to a good place either.
Yeah. So you had this huge religious input. You grew up in a very religious home. You knew a lot about, but never really knowing God
Right.
himself. And so as you went through your system and the reformational process, just share how did you ever arrive to that relationship piece, or did you have to leave did you leave both, or how did you have to?
Well, so I don't know if this is the correct way or the best way. So I'm not really. I can't say I would advise anyone to follow what I did or have. Maybe it's right for them, maybe it wouldn't be. But for me, first there came a disillusionment with my prior and existing beliefs, and I just had the thoughts, well, obviously this isn't right because it led me here. So
Yeah.
I had to really evaluate and look at everything, but it was really hard to, and this might sound kind of strange to someone, because from the outside looking in, you would think, well, it's an easy problem to solve, but it was an easy problem for me to solve, because I almost didn't know what to scrap and what to keep, so to speak. So I made the decision to scrap everything and just act as though, objectively as I could at the time, act as though there is no God. Now let God show himself to me.
So you had an incredible reading list. When I saw
Yeah.
your reading list in prison, you were very active in learning all about all kinds of different things. You know,
Yeah.
there was very wide history to philosophy to a
hmm
lot of different things. So, who was some of those people that in that time that really impacted you and leading you down that idea to scrap?
So, so probably my first introduction to philosophy that made an impact was Socrates.
Mm.
And I'm sure everybody's, probably at least heard
Yeah.
of him
Yeah.
at some point in their life. But there was one saying that he said that resonated with me: an unexamined life is not worth living.
Mm.
So that right there was kind of a sounding bell. It's like, I need to start taking stock of things. I need to start looking at things. I need to start examining my life.
Mm.
Not just when I have a problem, because when we run into a problem, that jolts us and we're like, okay, what's wrong?
Yeah.
But it made me look at my life in the totality of it, regardless if I was going through anything or not. I just want to start critiquing my life
Mm.
and taking stock of it, to make it meaningful. So that was the first one, and then that progressed to Plato and then Aristotle,
Mm.
and then I read several Spinoza. I read William James, which is the father of American psychology, but he was faith based, so he had
Mhm.
which is kind of interesting for psychologists because a lot of times they're secular in their
Yeah.
their background, but he was a very interesting read.
Mm.
Uh, Carl Jung
Mm.
was another really really good one, but the one that was pivotal for me as far as how it contributed to reshaping my path
Yeah.
spiritually, and it's kind of it probably sounds like a contradiction on the surface,
Yeah.
is Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yeah, that definitely is a contradiction. Yeah.
Yeah,
The one who was to believe nothing at all is the one who helped you find belief.
it is the one that announced God is dead.
Yep.
Is the one that helped me find my own personal relationship, or at least put me on the path
Mm-hmm.
of trying to develop my own personal relationship with God.
Mm.
And that problem, I know that sounds like a contradiction, but Nietzsche's boldness to be able to speak and write things that were just outrageous in his day,
Mm.
that took courage.
Mm.
It took a certain amount of courage and conviction, as you would say, to go against the establishment of that time, the established belief system of that time. And I think from him, I drew some strength of just having the courage to forget about what I was told by anybody
Mm-hmm.
and develop my own convictions, my own beliefs,
Yeah.
regardless of what they were. Because what I took from him wasn't God is dead necessarily. I think that was a shocking statement to make, and I think the context, at least in my opinion, Nietzsche is hard to understand. So
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of people that could probably have 10
Yeah.
different interpretations of it, but I think he meant in the church of that time, God is dead, because he couldn't be found in in the church of that day,
Interesting. Which is
Okay.
your experience that you came
which
out
was
of.
my experience. And
Yeah.
so I think that resonated with me
Yeah.
because God was absent in my
Yeah.
quote unquote religious background.
Yeah.
And so I think that he helped me deconstruct,
Mm.
as you would say, all the things that led up to that point, and give me the courage to start building again, whatever that might be, whatever it might
Yeah.
turn out to be.
Yeah.
I was going to be responsible for it.
Yeah.
I was going to start charting my own path, walking
Yeah.
my own road, laying it brick by brick, and that was immensely helpful because that's what I needed.
Yeah.
Because as we know, nobody can do that for you, or they
Yeah.
shouldn't do it for you.
Right.
Each person should be doing that themselves if it's important to them.
Yeah. There's something powerful about men looking to rebuild their lives with convictions,
Mm-hmm.
because we see a lot of men who have no desire for that, or just no conviction at all, right? We
Right.
see a lot of that. But when we do surround ourselves with other men who have that does do something.
Yeah, it does.
Yep.
It absolutely does, and that's helpful to do that. But in my circumstance, I was pretty solo. It was a solo experience for me because I was isolated,
Yeah.
and where I was at making those just personal discoveries. I mean, I know everybody's on there. Well, I shouldn't say everyone. A lot of people
Yeah.
incarcerated they have the opportunity for personal discovery.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say everyone's
Yeah.
on that path, but
Yeah. Unfortunately not.
but everyone has that opportunity for that, and then some actually choose it and try to
Yeah.
walk that. But for me, I didn't look at it as self improvement so much as it was just a need.
Yeah.
Like what was working for me in life? Well, nothing was working for me in the past, so something had to change. I had to make some kind of changes, and I didn't even know what all those changes were. I just knew something had to change,
Yeah.
and probably more than something, but like lots of things. If my life was going to have any meaning, because I think my experience there initially made me feel meaningless, like no purpose.
Hmm.
I'm just sitting here suffering for the sake of suffering. Yeah, I'm being punished for
Hmm.
things that have transpired and things that I did, but is there any more to it than that, or is that all? And I think out of desperation, I didn't want that to be the only thing,
Yeah.
the only reason. So I had to find other reasons, for other purposes.
Yeah.
And I think that pushed me,
Yeah.
drove me to find some meaning. I guess I just, when that chapter closed and I was writing the next one, uh, everything was brand new to me at that point, because I was discovering it myself and nothing was being passed on to me, so to speak.
Such a powerful thing. So I've seen with the guys that we work with a lot and over these years is that a lot of guys keep the values map that they grew up with, and they're just trying to change their behavior. We call that reformation, right? We're just trying to take old behavior to new behavior just so you can function in society more healthy, more appropriately. But every once in a while, we'll find guys who actually go down this path, as you called it, this self-discovery path, and actually leave the old values map behind and build a new values map.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to know what that new values map is, because sometimes you just can't create it out of nothing.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of look around those men that you respect, that they do, right? And I think that's what is interesting in watching you and watching the guys around you, is that guys typically gather around you because you have found that conviction that to build something of substance that's more than just a fleeting thing that's good at this time. And so you moved from reformation to transformation.
Mm-hmm.
You actually transformed who you were. The man who went in is a different man who came out.
That's right.
Not just behavior-wise, but actually to the core of who you are. You are not that man going back into that system.
That's right.
You have left that forever, because that is not who you are today. And that is a beautiful picture of transformation, right? And it's something for me, as I see literally, we see other religious systems, they try to bring some of those things, but I think that's where that personal relationship is, in that knowing about God. There's truths out there, and how do we personally come to know them and live out of those truths is interesting.